Welcome to Cold Night in NZ. And tonight we have a special guest, Wagner Silveira. How are you?
Everyone, good, mate. Thank you. I was almost talking to you in Portuguese because you were doing that before. So,
Yeah.
but in
Oh,
Brazilian,
good. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's a pleasure having you here. Like you've been coming to the sessions like throughout like those years, those past years. It's always a pleasure having you like in our sessions. You're always bringing something interesting about like Logic Apps, right? So you're bringing this introduction to Logic Apps Standard SDK. As a developer, I'm really excited about that. Could you tell us, like, just bring like a little teaser of what you're presenting?
I think you actually nail in the head is saying that it's like as a developer, I'm interested in Logic Apps, but I want to do stuff as a developer, right? So the idea here is actually that e- create workflows or define workflows in something that you're comfortable like
Yeah,
in this case .NET and C Sharp, instead of having to use a visual tool.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, very. This is a really interesting topic for me. I've been working with Logic Apps for a long time, so I'm keen to learn a little bit more tonight. Before we jump, Wagner, let me just introduce the user group. So if you're coming here for the first time, we're Coding Nights user group. We are a community group of developers. We love coding, follow best practices, software development languages and technologies. In general, we tend to focus a little bit more on the Microsoft stack, but we are open to all stacks. And the main intent here, like the main goal of the user group, is to enable developers with practical knowledge to excel and launch their careers. I'd like to mention that we're part of AzureTar.com, which is a cloud native group of enthusiasts where we get to share the latest and greatest in the cloud native space. .NET Foundation, apparently the logo is not coming, but which is the entity that looks after the different open source .NET projects, and JetBrains, software tooling for developers. So where we get to share free licenses for developers. With no further ado, Wagner, let me bring your screen.
No worries. Thanks, Marcel. Thanks for having me again. Right. So that hopefully I make you proud one more time. So my name is Wagner Silveira. I'm a principal product manager on the Logic Apps team, and the areas that I work on are mainly developer experience and community outreach. So I think that one is the sweet spot of everything, getting in touch with the community and talking about developer experience. And the topic that you have today is Logic Apps Standard SDK. That's, as I said, is like writing workflows or defining workflows in C Sharp, not in JSON as we do with the Visual Tool. So, what is why? Probably is the first question that you'll be asking. Is like why this, right? So, why something like Logic Apps that is historically visual might need a, 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 a way to defining code. So we already saw that a lot of people is actually doing integration, is creating workflows, but they are doing that in C Sharp without a lot of support of what a workflow engine could give, right? And and even when if you already developer using the Logic Apps tool like you, Marcel, there are places where either my workflow is starting to become so complex, and you probably had that problem with like a workflow that has become so big that actually the visual designer that initially helps you start to get in the way and would prefer to actually have that in code that is easy to scan, is easy to find the right places to make the changes, etc. Or you are new to that, you're new to the integration space, your whole career or your whole, if you're thinking of, as a organization, your whole developer bench are experts in .NET, but they don't, they needed to work with workflow engines, right? So in the end, what happens is you end up trying to create the things that Logic Apps would give you for you by default, because you don't want it to use, or you cannot use a visual tool. So we're trying to break that barrier, right? So what we're doing here is just having a different front door or a different authoring experience for Logic Apps, instead of like having to reinvent the whole workflow engine. So if you think about it, is what you're doing here is actually just a new way to alter Logic Apps, not a new way to run Logic Apps. That's super important, because that means that all the runtime experience that you have with Logic Apps today, and the operational excellence that you have with Logic Apps is not lost, which is usually what people love about Logic Apps, is visually seeing my design when it's running, seeing exactly what happened on my workflow every time that I'm executing. But when I wanted to write it, I don't want it to be attached to a visual designer. It's as simple as that, right? So the way that we're doing that is creating a new Logic Apps Standard SDK package that you can use. And what that SDK give you is a couple of things. It gives you like a connector SDK, so you're actually able to access all the connectors, and also give you a fluent API for defining how those workflows are working, or how those workflows needed to be stitched together, right? And the reasons why we would want that is, for example, you wanted your workflow a definition to behave like the rest of your code. You really used to, if I actually writing that in code, I want type safety, I wanted IntelliSense, right? I wanted the ability to do like an F5, and the thing started running for me. If I'm writing actual code, I wanted to like be able to debug and do things like that. One thing that a lot of other customers told us when we are working with that is actually uh, uh, one of the problems that they have with Logic Apps, incredible as could be, is not doing authoring, but it's like, how do I actually reconcile when I'm working with a team of more than one developer, right? So actually, how I do source control. Source control is a given, use Git, especially with Logic Apps Standard, but who uh, 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 who likes to actually do diff in JSON, where one you change one line of code, or one
Yeah,
line, and because it automatically try to readjust the whole thing alphabetically, whatever it is, especially on a graph like Logic Apps, which the definition is actually not the sequence, but just how they correlate with the run afters,
yeah, that's true.
right? Change one line might give you like 90% of diff. And when you actually look at the crux of that, it's like, I changed that line, it moved here, and now everything is out of sync, right?
It does that. Yeah.
It's not a problem that you have with code. And one of the things that you wanted to make sure that we are doing is you having extensibility on your own terms. We were discussing just after the meeting, where you're saying, I'm working on a client right now where everything is working with Logic Apps, and then I needed to create something to pass JSON. I was very
Mhm.
specific to that client, right?
Yeah,
So I
correct.
started to use local functions, and local functions was something that we created that's already adding value. But the problem with that, especially if you actually trying to get into that developer mindset, is I'm on the visual designer, I needed to create that. I jump to another canvas that is code, I write the code, I have to build that part so it reflects on the designer. Then I go back to designer, I added that local code, and then I run the debug. So
Yeah.
I'm tired of just talking, right? Like
A
all
lot
these
of
questions
jumps.
we
Yeah,
had.
different contexts. Yeah.
If you're doing that for a couple of components, that's fine, right? Because you're adding value to what you use mostly day by day. But if you have a lot of extensibility to do, then that whole process starts to get in the way. While in here, what you actually can do is getting this whole thing running or written together in the same canvas, that is the C# editor, build them together, deploy it together. And when you're talking about extensibility, we're not talking about just that, just the ability to write everything in the same place. Is, as you're going to see here, is basically a .NET project. That means that you actually might have that extensibility created somewhere else and started to share across projects the same way that you share any kind of common components. You get a package, you drop it on the code, and all of a sudden now you have the references for that. Okay.
Yep.
Last thing that before we jump to the next slide is that Logic Apps has been had a push last year to also become an a business automation workflow engine, right? Which is really a sibling for an enterprise application integration engine, but
Mhm.
more important, an agentic business process automation workflow. And because that SDK represents the actual universe of what Logic Apps presents, right? Or will be when you get into GA. That means that you'll be able to take advantage that if you use enterprise integration, but also if you use in agentic workflows. Oh, I was clicking in the wrong place. So I'll just give you like a very quick view of the project because I think the best place to actually see this project is in local on an example that I'm going to share. But the workflow, no pun intended, of creating a new Logic Apps workspace now is super similar to what we're doing today. You
Mhm.
create a new Logic Apps workspace. We
Yep.
add in a new type of project now that is Logic Apps Codeful. Same way that we have Logic Apps Standard, Logic Apps with function with custom code, you have the Logic Apps Codeful, and that's basically the only difference that you have. Once you select that, you create your first workflow. Is going to drop you in a C# project with at least two files. That is a program.cs, that is your entry point for runtime, and a workflow.cs, which is now your workflow definition file, right? Then inside that, you'll be able to enable connectors, to use connectors from Azure and other things. And when you're ready, just press F5 to start testing locally. The beauty of that is like when you run this, we actually going to pass actually compile what you're doing, and the output of that compilation is a workflow.json file, right? That is going to
Yeah.
allow you to actually see the workflow running as a workflow that you're seeing if you're creating it visually. So now you get the best of both worlds. You have the ease of implementation on C# with the operational excellence that I was talking about. That is like seeing that visually.
So just a question, like, so what happens that the binary generates this workflow JSON, and that's basically what the Logic Apps look, right?
Exactly.
And you see, that's cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
the output of the C# the project is a DLL, and that DLL, like behind the scenes, when you initializing the runtime, it actually picks up from the DLL all those
Uh,
JSONs and keeps that. So that's what you actually run in memory.
all right, cool.
So let's take an example for that one, right? I'll go to get my thing. And now, sorry, I'll have to look here so I can actually
I can bring from full screen.
yeah, there we go. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to show, and I not go through this whole process, but first thing I'm going to show you here is just to give you guys a little bit of the, you usually would see it like this, right? So you have the Azure tab, and on the Azure tab is that where you have the workspaces is how you create a new Logic App project or new Logic Apps workspace, right? So you click on that, you select create new Logic Apps workspace, and that opens this new wizard, which help you to go through each one of these steps, right? So you decide where you're going to be putting your workspace, right? So what is the parent folder of that workspace? What is your workspace name? And here it says exactly where that code workspace is going to be created, and and in which path is going to be created under. Then you select the name of your Logic Apps project. And here is what I said before. If you wanted to create a Logic App that is fully written in C Sharp, you just select Logic Apps Code. You still have the ability to create a Logic Apps Standard, that is the visual designer. The Logic Apps with custom code, that is the visual designer plus the functions project that we were discussing before. Or for people that is working with the rules agent, the Logic Apps with rules engine, sorry. But we interested on that. So you give the name to one of the workflows, and then the type of workflow. As I said before, we support both the stateful types and the agentic types, right? Once you select one of those and click on next, it gives you like the just a confirmation of everything that you're going to do, and then you can click on create workspace. Is going to be opening a new window with this new project. But for the sake of the speed, instead of doing that, I'm just going to jump here for a project that I already have. And now let me, is that okay,
Cool.
Marcel?
Yeah, that's looking good. Yeah.
Cool. So let's start taking a look at one of the workflows, right? Or actually, before we go to the workflows, let's take a quick look at program.cs. So that program.cs is kind of a boilerplate file. Most of the time, you're not going to be able to change it. But what it does is basically it builds your host. So that means that you can say what is the workflows that you're adding, and by default you just add it like everything that is on that assembly, right? But you could go and say maybe I have 10 workflows here, some of them are not ready to go yet. I could simply go and have a list of the workflows that I wanted for test. So you have a lot of other you have a lot of leeway on how you're doing that. And then you go and get your host.run that basically is going to be creating your host instance. So when you do like func host start, this is what is invoked.
Yeah.
And then let's take a look at one of the workflows. So when you created the workflows, as I was showing to you before, it creates that boilerplate for you, right? So from here you can go and strip everything that you wanted, but usually what you have is a trigger, one or more actions, right? And then after that, the workflow definition itself. So, and here is what I was talking about, the ability to have this as a Fluent API. So you understand exactly how your workflow is going to be looking, and that one is super simple because it's a sequential workflow. But I have a trigger, then I call this action, then I call this other action.
Hmm.
And when you're happy with that, you just return the workflow definition with the name of that workflow. That is what is going to look like when you run it. Okay.
Cool.
So, but that is a very simple example. Let's take a look at something that is not overly complex, but is a little bit more than just that. So if you look at that example here, again, we started with a trigger, right? And then here are going to be start just showing a little bit of the IntelliSense. We have today two types of triggers available and two types of actions. You have your built-in triggers, which are the triggers that not require any of the connectors, and you have the managed connectors. So for the people that already knows about the Logic Apps, we have two types of connectors. One that works as external Azure resources, which are the managed connectors, and the service provider connectors that are the connectors that runs together with the workflows. So
Mm-hmm.
during public preview, we have access to the managed connectors. We're going to be doing a public review refresh really soon. That is going to also include the service provider connectors,
Yeah.
right? But in this case, I'm creating a built-in trigger. And you can see again from the built-in, I have the recurrence trigger, I have the HTTP trigger, and I have the conversational agent trigger, right? In my case, I created an HTTP trigger, and when I create the HTTP trigger, you have the IntelliSense of all the components that you needed. If you already created that HTTP trigger on Logic Apps, you can see that exactly the same kind of stuff, right? You
Yeah.
give a name, you give a method, you give a JSON schema, and you potentially give a relative path on how it's going to be created. On that one, just to make it like not being super simple, I just added the JSON schema, right, which is like receive a location and the location is required, and just returning that, giving a name for that trigger. So that name is important because this is what is going to show on the visual designer. If you don't do that, then we're going to be putting like a generic name, and then each one of your flows executions is going to look a little bit different, right? So that's
Yeah.
what allow you to have like a continuity between runs. Then after that, I have another built-in, but now we're talking about workflow actions, right? I have another built-in action that is the variables. So I'm initializing a variable called location. And close that. And I'm starting that with empty. After that, I have a condition, so an if. So I have workflow actions dot built-in dot controls, and if you look at the controls, I have the condition, the for each, the scope, the switch, the terminate, and the until. So all the components that we have in Logic Apps are available here. And a condition is defined as an expression, then a chain of nodes if it's true, and a chain of nodes if it's false, right?
Yeah.
So you can see that it's like we still needed those controls because we wanted to keep parity with the Logic Apps visual. Otherwise, wouldn't be able to do like a comparison or an apples to apples with the visual one, and wouldn't be able to like convert that, right? But this,
Yeah.
so think about this as a bit of a domain specific language, but all coded in a way that it's easy for you to understand and to replicate,
Yep.
right? So in here I say, if my trigger output body, like the value that I generated here, right? So this one is Auckland, then add to the variable Auckland, New Zealand. So it knows which Auckland you're talking about when you get in the uh, uh, when you get in the weather. Otherwise, spice for whatever is in the location.
Yep.
And add this as a check if location is open. Then now I'm calling one connector. And here I'm calling like the simplest connector that we have, which is the MSN weather connector, right? So the MSN where a connector passing in getting the current where for the location that you're receiving. So one thing that is interesting here that you see that this now is actually using my variable, but now I'm able to actually just like use location.variable.string. And you're going to see another example of that later on when I get in the results of the connection. What is type of the units? I need the units metrics, right? And again, I don't need to go and try to find out what values that accepted because this is a none. So we try as much as possible to get like that. Although we're working with a domain specific language, we still giving you like all those tools that you have on C# to discover how to find the types and things that are required here
Yeah.
and give an
Oh, we got a question here, like around the actions, right? So I'm just bringing. I think it's more like really. Oh, I think it's valid because you can explain. So Salion is mentioning like can Logic Apps use the same actions found in Power Automate, right?
So we needed to go one step up instead of actions and talk about managed connectors are shared, mostly shared between Power Automate and Logic Apps. So if I get my list of the managed connectors here, right, you're going to find here like the Azure 365 MCP servers. You're going to find what else? You're going to find Salesforce. You're going to find Dataverse must be
Dataverse.
around here. Or how do we call that one? Dataverse should be here. We have the service bus, right? So all the connectors that we have here are similar connectors that we have in Power Automate. There is like probably a little difference on some of them are only on Logic Apps, some of them are only on Power Automate, right? But the majority of that are available. One thing that is different from Logic Apps to Power Automate is what I was talking before about the when you bring in service providers, those are a subset of the workflow of those connectors. But the biggest adventure of the service provider connectors is that instead of being an external resource that you go, I'm on Logic Apps, I call that external connector, and then that connector goes and comes back. So we add in a little bit of latency, but you're also doing a call inside the Microsoft network. It's not public internet, but it's inside the Microsoft network, right? Instead of that, the service providers are actually components inside of the runtime. So, and what that means is that instead of you going out to an external Azure resource that proxies your call, the service provider does your call directly.
Yeah, that's cool.
Biggest advantage of that is that you're able to do this inside a closed network environment, for example, without opening any ports apart from the ports that you needed to access your end systems. If using managed connectors, you have to open the list of ports that are available for the managed connectors in general on that region. So you actually open the gates for any managed connector, not to specific managed connectors, right?
Cool.
So I hope that explained. And we cannot talk about connectors without talking about connection. And that's probably the first question for someone that is already using Logic Apps is, okay, this is a managed connector for MSN Weather. How do I actually create a connection for that? You see that this node here is not something that you would be finding in a normal C#, right? So
Correct.
when we start this, we actually load an LSP server that loads all the connections that you have, but also the SDK, so it understands that you are on the Logic Apps SDK, and now it can track things like workflows.actions.manage, find out what is the action that we're using, and then say manage the connection for that action. And if I click on that button, I actually open the space and allow you to go and create a new connection.
Cool.
Right? So you could go here and click on add new and create. On that one, I'm just going to cancel because of I know that all of those are working fine. So we don't deal with demo gods if you don't have to. But that's allow you to go and create new connections if you need to. Then now I have two types of responses. And that's the reason of that is because if I receive a status okay, what I wanted is for you to give me the current weather is in location blah is the current temperature, right? And you see what I was talking before, that instead of you having to understand what is the value that you needed to get to find temperature, you have all of that as workflow, then response okay. And I see that I didn't put anything here, right? Because by default, as on all the other ones, I'm expecting that do that when the previous one worked.
Mm-hmm.
But I can also say, as a parallel to that, I have workflow, then response bad request when flow status.fail and flow status.timeout. So if you look at the my then signature, I have workflow action, right?
Yeah.
And flow status, a list of flow status for run after. And probably if you look at here, I think it's going to give me, trying to find out, that's me not knowing C# enough, if like how they would give me all the three overloads of that.
All right.
Yeah, you forget about that. You're not going to be changing. I don't want you to change this. But come on, I don't need this. I hate when it start to give me
Just escape.
things that I don't need. And then finally, I return in the workflow with that, right? So if everything here works as I'm expecting, what I should have is a workflow that is mostly sequential. I have a trigger, then I have a variable initialization, a condition with two different of initialization or variable updates depending on the result, then the action, and a parallel execution of okay if it's the everything works, or the bad response if it failed.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if that is what actually happened. So what I'm doing now is like I'm going to build, right? And you see, like I just press F5 here, and then what it's doing is building the project. Then after it builds the project, it's going to start the functions runtime, and then get myself into debug mode.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. It built, and you see that's like the result of that build was that
Yeah.
.NET
No.
8, right? It's just that DLL.
Yeah.
And then it's starting that using that DLL. So everything started. We are here on debug. And here is how you actually see the operational side of that. You can go, if you click on programs, like program has a special entry call overview. And if you click on that overview, what you're doing is, I'll just get in it a little bit smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what you get here is kind of the dashboard that you have locally for each one of the workflows. So you can choose like different workflows, right? And see like the results of that. But in this case, we interested on integrated sample. And I have this call here
Mhm.
that when my REST API gets in, I'm going to do a send request. And there we go.
Yeah,
It called, right? Come back with the current weather in Auckland is 12 degrees.
12 degrees.
And
Yeah.
it's pretty much it. Like on my one is actually 13, but it's that one degree variation is what you would get in from the weather forecast.
Yeah.
Let's see how that run, right? And then we can do a little bit of a comparison with the actual code. So this is the call, third of the no 8th of damn it,
3rd of
3rd
August.
of August, 8:37 p.m.
Yeah.
Run took 4 seconds to run because it was the first run, right? And if you look at that, you actually have this workflow that we define in
Yeah, that's
code
cool.
fully rendered. And just to prove that it's like here is the things with the proper
Mhm.
uh, 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 body schema, right? Initialized variable with the empty value, the check that returned true because we passed uh, uh, the Auckland value. And then because of that, my set location to Auckland was changed to Auckland, New Zealand. And we go, and then you get the weather forecast with Auckland, New Zealand. Here is the response, right? Temperature 12,
Yeah.
and more information if you wanted to. And here is, I think, the most important part that is I have the current weather and I have the response, okay, which is it returned for us because that worked. But here is the parallel branch that we discussed. And for those that are used to the Logic Apps, this is like success, timeout, skipped, and failed, right? And it's showing that this one would execute on a timeout or on a skipped or on a timeout or a failed. Since it was skipped, it didn't run,
Hmm.
right? So you have, for me, I think this is the main thing that you take out of that SDK is the ability to quickly, once you master how the DSL works, to write that, right? While still getting this. And the other thing that is probably super important is pointing the SDK to a copilot uh, uh, agent, and that can say, "Hey, create for me a workflow that does that."
Hmm.
The chances of getting that faster compared to getting that with JSON is a lot bigger, right?
Yeah.
With full compilation and everything, like making sure that like at least syntactically is correct,
Hmm.
which you don't have when you're doing like with the visual, right? The visual you have to be on the designer, get the
Yeah.
designer validation, or risk it doing like F5 upon F5. So taking advantage of the coding agents to creating your workflows now, it's a lot better. And I can do that in multiple ways, right? I can actually just point to the SDK, let it spend some time like the reverse engineering, or you can use the MCP learn because let me get one page here. If you go to learnmicrosoft.com on our references, you have like the whole Logic Apps Standard SDK reference available. So that
Nice.
means that
Yeah.
you can go and understand like how each one of the action or the components work, the types and the entry points and all of that, right? So pointing a coding agent to that it can go and create the things a lot faster.
That's
So
true.
much
Yeah.
so that this initial code here, like I did many iterations of that, but like the base of that code, where it added each one of those components, was done with one prompt on Code Agent.
That's cool. Yeah.
Cool. So that was the demo. Let's go back and talk about some of the just recap some of the other concepts that I showed here quickly, right? Before we get we wrap this up. But if there is any other questions, feel free to
Yeah.
send. So first thing is we talk about the Fluent API, right? And that Fluent API has basically two main verbs or two main methods there. There is the then method that allow you to do things either sequentially if you just stitch them by the same run after, right? So in this case, a trigger, then a validate order, then a get order, then a send a response. Or you can actually run in parallel when you do the trigger, then the try process, then the handle failure if the flow status is fail or timeout. So on that case, I would be doing this run, a trigger happens, then I try this, and this is what happens if that one fails,
It fails.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But in theory, you wanted to also go and potentially on my, if I go back to my example here, where I might wanted to do something that was getting success and failure together. Let's say that instead of doing this, I just had like had either another variable or having something else where I wanted to do one or the other. I could always do like var final equals success dot join failure, then a finally kind of thing,
Mm. Yeah.
right? I could
Yeah.
I could do something like that, and that's the idea of that join is getting two branches and bring it back together, which is
Yeah.
something that we're able to do on the yeah. Let's do like this, just although I didn't define the finally action, but that is something that we
Correct. Yeah.
would be able to do, right?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Then on top of that, so here we do like a fun out, then a fun in. On top of that, we actually have all the control components, right? Like the flow control. You have the if, which is that's like we kept this condition just to have a parity with what the designer has, and so it doesn't get confused with like an actual if statement. But you have condition, you have a for each, you have the switch, the until, the scope, and the terminates. Each one of those has its own set of values. And notice that what we have here for on that example is actually true branch and false branch is are actually nodes, not in individual actions, right? So what I mean by that is if we go back to the code just to see, like, you see that my response, no, sorry, here on my true branch, I just created that set variable.
Yeah.
But I could say in here, it could be something like open and close, and then this is var wrong place, var set var equals workflow blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then I could have another,
Yeah.
right? I could have like var compose equals workflow actions dot build in dot compose. This is something
Mm-hmm.
with name compose, and then I return set var then compose. So I can actually have what I'm saying here is I can actually have a complex components inside the true and inside the false branch,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
right? So you can have that thing, and the same things that you talk about then and join, like the same complexity that you can have in other places. And notice that all of those are actually like you do in Lambda, right? So this we could actually just get all of this component created somewhere else
Yep.
because it's more complex, and here we just represent that.
Yep. You're just injecting there, right? So that's an option too. That's good.
Don't save. I don't want to have it to remember what I did wrong on my previous demo, but just to give an idea of things can do. Same thing would go for each, right? And then for the switch until scope. So you have the ability to actually have scopes there, where you can connect like group of things that either work together and or fail together. That means that instead of you doing like that change on the individual, the last item, we could do it on the scope. So anything that fails would fail on that.
Mhm.
Then the other item is the connect to catalog, right? Right now, as I show you guys, you have access to the built-in and to the managed catalog of connectors. And service providers are coming, and we're going to have support for that really soon. The other thing that we're working as well is ability to have dynamic schemas. So if you're working with Logic Apps today, you know that if you connect it, for example, to Dataverse and you select a table or an entity on Dataverse, it actually show you the list of the actual components that it has, right? So for table, for a Salesforce or a Dataverse, for example, it's actually going to give you the full list of all the columns that you have on
Mhm.
that table. This is not available right now, right? So for those that are complex or dynamic schemas, we're going to actually allow you to do that using like just the JSON, the what is the name that we would give to that? Like the generic format, right? So because you behind the scenes you receive in a JSON component, so you could do like table, put the name of the table, and then component one, right? Just doing
The
the
selection.
concatenation of the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you
That's
have
interesting.
dynamic schemas, you're actually going to have it will be able to generate a strong type for you to deal with,
I see. Yeah,
right?
makes sense.
And right now we're using connection keys, but managed identity is something that we actually just put it out, and I'm testing that on Codeful. So really soon we were able to use local managed identity locally for development. For
That's cool.
for
Yeah.
for deployment is not a problem, right? But for local is the same problem that you had until now on the visual one.
Yeah.
You can only use the local or the connection strings because you're not able to access. You don't have the concept of managed identity locally, but you
Yeah.
have the concept of Azure default credentials.
Azure
And this
default
is
credentials.
actually,
Yeah.
yeah, so this is actually implemented on the current version of the uh, uh, the extension. If you go and shameless plug, if you go and watch like the latest Logic Apps Live, the one that I run last week, I show how to use managed identity for uh, uh, the Logic Apps connectors, right on the visual. And in theory, the process is exactly the same. I just not saying that it's there 100% because I didn't test it yet. But it shouldn't like exactly because the runtime is the same. It if it works for the visual, it should be working for the custom. Oh, sorry, the code for as well.
Yeah, but because it's public preview, right? So when are you intending to go GA with the
And
SDK?
we going GA at this stage. I would say this semester, right? So, but close to the end of the year. The only thing we wanted to we don't want it to rush on that because I don't think it would be from a technical point of view an issue to get it to GA. What is actually be is like user adoption. So we are able to test a lot of stuff, but not all the cases, right?
Yeah,
And especially because this is a new frontier for Logic Apps in a way, we needed customers to start using that to actually show what you're trying to do with the tool to make sure that we support all those other scenarios before we declare GA. Because if you do that and then you find something that actually needs a breaking change, we could do it because it's would be just a new version of the new get, but you wanted to get actually out with the biggest support possible for the scenarios that a lot of people is
yeah,
using. So the call to action for you guys and everyone else is play with that, right? You don't need to use it in production, but play with that. Get your code agents loose on the SDK, see what it can do, see where you're finding the gaps, and send it back for us because the more that we close those gaps now, the better for the GA.
yeah,
One thing that is I didn't show you guys, and I'll just show just like how it works. But as I was debugging that one, I didn't close that, so I'm not going to be running a demo. Is if you look at it, a workflow like this one of the things that you can do is you can have a custom code. So the same code that you were discussing before, the Marcel, that
mhm,
was like me creating a custom function and
yeah,
injecting, I can actually do using this, right? So I create a custom code with a type, and then I call method that matches the signature,
yeah,
right? So in this case here, what I'm trying to do is getting like today's result and tomorrow result, and then getting a response. But then because I spent the whole day on at Microsoft today instead of working from home, I was having trouble like debugging that one. So I didn't want to give you something that fails, but you can see that it's going to be something similar to that. You can actually get results, right? Dot result.
yeah,
And here I was trying to cast to something very specific, but I think that cast was the wrong one, and that's why it's failing. But you would be able to get this, and then from here, be
mhm,
able to do a calculation and
yeah.
return values and things like that.
Uh, That's cool. Yeah, so you're passing like the workflow context. You have like access to
Because
all of
the
the
idea
variables, all of the states.
Yeah, the idea of the passing the workflow context is having access to all of the items up to the point where that workflow has been executed.
Yeah.
So everything that comes before of that, you would have access to it.
Yeah.
Then finally, from a deployment point of view, is the same way that you deploy in other codes, right? So it would be your right-click deploy or pushing that to your CI/CD with one difference. If you're doing that for Logic Apps today, your build is actually just uh, uh, doing a zip on a package. Now your build is actually doing running .dll and getting the DLL with the connections.json, the parameters.json, and the host.json together. So it's a different kind of package that you needed to push if you're doing that on CI/CD. If you're doing that from VS Code to your your sandbox, the right-click deploy takes care of those steps for you
So in
and
this case,
support
for
that.
compiling, you would use the AZ CLI to build the Logic
Well,
app.
for compiling is actually a pure .NET
You
compilation,
don't have build, perfect.
right? So, if you look at here, the I can just go here and do like a rebuild on this project, and it's actually just doing a .NET rebuild
Don't have rebuild. Yeah.
or a .NET release or that not clean. And a lot of the steps that you do when you do like a run debug, as you can see on the tasks, are going to be things like what is it? So that one is get our .NET path binary, right? So .NET clean dash dash configuration release with those properties for publish or for build. So all of those things are the same uh, .NET arguments that you have. You just putting that here on
Yeah.
task, so you can actually orchestrate that. But in theory, you could do like a .NET build, a .NET publish, a .NET a function host start all manually, and would start your host with that.
Cool.
One thing only that is important to talk about deployment is you able to deploy everything is going to be working in the cloud just like you see, but because now you actually authoring a C# code and building, so compiling to a DLL, everything that you see uh, uh, on the Azure resource re- related to the workflows are read-only. So you can open the workflows on the designer, you can see the connections, you can see all of those things, but they are read-only because the source of truth is actually your source code now, instead of being otherwise you actually would end up having a nightmare of a monster, right?
Ah,
Where
yeah, for
I
sure.
do changes in the I do changes in production that I don't have any way to revert back because it's not just bringing the JSON anymore. Is
No, yeah.
how what did you do there translates to code. So that's why is always one way from the code to that the visual representation instead of both ways, because there are things in the you can do in the code that is not able to do here, like on the visual, the same way.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And with that, I think that is the end of the presentation, right? Hopefully, right on time. So You can go and scan those, take a screenshot and then scan some of those. Uh, that we have the announcement blog, you have the how-to guide, and that SDK reference that I showed there here with you for you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I was going to ask like for the references. You have like all sorted, all those QR codes,
Mm-hmm.
so people, yes, studying on, just yeah, saying like that was very informative. So happy about that. I'm happy about that as well. So it's something new to play with,
And
and
that is
yeah,
my ask. Go play with that and get in touch with us. Anything that you see that can be improved, anything that is not working for you, or uh, 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 help our engineers to feel better as well. It's like everything that is working for you. So tell us what is not working, but also what is working, so you can continue on that path, on the right path.
sounds good. Yeah, I think like this is it. Well, I'd like to
Mhm.
thank you so much, Wagner, for
My
being
pleasure, mate.
available after like a busy day. I know like in New Zealand it's 9 p.m. now, and yeah, it's always it's always a pleasure like have you here, coming sharing like the latest like with what's coming on Logic Apps from directly from the product team, you as a product manager. And yeah, you're very welcome to come back when like new releases come, and
For
feel free.
sure.
Yeah, feel free to come anytime. Yeah, you're always welcome.
That's great. Thank you, man. And thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
that joined today.
Yeah, that's the same. And yeah, just keep an eye on the user group. There should be like more sessions coming up. We're mixing now online with in-person sessions and with workshops. And yeah, just keep an eye on the user groups and the events that we are running. Thanks so much,
Great.
and catch you guys next time. Cheers.
See you later.